should think twice. Would you wanna be like you? How you gonna reply? Would you wanna be like you?
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to do a tag that I saw Abby Williamson do. I was not tagged in this, but this is something open to anyone. So anyone watching, if you have a YouTube channel or you're just interested in talking about your eyeshadow palettes, I definitely recommend doing this. If you could see, I brought out pretty much every single eyeshadow palette I own, and it is quite overwhelming. I'm not going to necessarily go through every eyeshadow palette that I own, but I'm going to do certain questions, and then, you know, per category, I will show you the eyeshadow palette that fits that category. I think it's quite interesting. I've been watching a few of these different videos because I like to see first of all, what people own, you know, where people are at with their collections. So the first question is your newest eyeshadow palette. And it's kind of a tie because I bought these literally at the same time from the same company, but it would be the Kylie Cosmetics Flower Bomb, which I did a tutorial on. This one right here. See my ring light and everything. Ooh. Inception. So it's this one right here. And then that's tied for the Kylie Cosmetics as well, Smoky Glow palette. And that is the one that's all like pinks in collaboration with Hannah from Smoky Glow. So it's this one. Ooh, let me take this baby off. So it's that one right there. So that's the tie for my newest eyeshadow palette. Okay, so the next question is your oldest eyeshadow palette. And for me, I did a declutter not too long ago, so I don't have the palette I was using, like my first like real eyeshadow palette, which would be the Urban Decay Naked palette. I feel like everyone had that palette at one point. It was so old, I actually ended up getting rid of it. I'm almost certain I got rid of it. I don't think I have it in my collection anymore, but that would definitely be my oldest eyeshadow palette. But what I physically have here is my Morphe 350, and this thing is like beat to hell. I don't even know if I can really show, like the eyeshadow pans are all falling out. A lot of these are empty. They're just, I've definitely used this one a lot. This one doesn't, in this slot, it doesn't even have an eyeshadow. Like the pan completely fell off. I don't know where the heck it is. Hopefully it's having a good life somewhere. But that would definitely be in my collection here. I think that's probably, I would say, my oldest eyeshadow palette that I physically can show you. The next one is your most expensive eyeshadow palette. Now, don't judge me, but I do have a Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette. This one was $129. Yes, it looks like this. It is literally so stunning. She was quite expensive, obviously. I did at one point have a Natasha Denona palette as well. It was the Safari palette, which is the same price point as this one, but I wasn't impressed with it, so I ended up returning it. I used it like a time or two, and I was like, this is not worth the $129. It was the one that's all mattes. There's no shimmers. The mattes, they were nice. Like, it was a nice eyeshadow palette, but I didn't see justifying that price point for what you get. And the colors weren't so out of this world that I felt like I needed to keep it in my collection. And this one, I do feel like is worth the money. I mean, if you don't have the money to spend on it, by all means, don't spend the money on it. But what makes these so unique is like the shimmers in here are just like crazy. And some of them are like duochrome, which I like. And then one of these, like, what color is this? Oh, I don't even know. You would think for that expensive of a product that you would have the names on it, but I guess not. So, like, just, it was so stunning. And this was the one that called to me, like the color story that called to me the most. So I was just like, it was a moment of weakness, don't judge me. I personally think that these are amazing. She has another palette coming out too. I can't remember the name exactly, but I don't know. It's looking real good to me. I don't know that I would necessarily buy it because of that price point, but the colors definitely, I love warm tone eyeshadows. I know I'm wearing an all blue look right now. It's because I'm going to take pictures of this eyeshadow. Okay, so just to balance that out, now we're going to talk about my least expensive eyeshadow palette, and that would be my Milani Soft and Sultry palette. If you can tell, this color is completely gone. For a while there, I was using this eyeshadow actually as my eyebrow, like as an eyebrow powder. So it's like completely gone. And honestly, that's kind of the only reason I use this palette. I bought it because it's, if you can tell, it's all cool tones. So, I mean, there's like this one shadow has like a little bit of warmth to it, but for the most part, it's a very cool tone palette. Their colors are just so cool tone, and I don't really have much of that in my collection. And it got good reviews. I've heard a few people putting it in their favorites, and it is a good eyeshadow palette. Like if you love cool tones, it's definitely, I would say, look into it. This is about like $10 to $12 depending on where you buy it. But for the most part, that's around the price range, so it would make it my like most inexpensive, like affordable eyeshadow palette that I own. And I don't really, if you can see, like a lot of these are pretty untouched, but for the sake of switching things up and being a little bit more different, I decided to buy it, and I don't regret it at all, especially at that price point. You really can't regret something like that, but it's not something I get a lot of use out of. The most like everyday, most like kind of used palette that I own, and that would be my Tati Beauty, if I can open this, my Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals Volume 1 palette, which, let me take the thing off, looks like this. I love this palette. I love how you have the different textures, why they call it texture neutrals, in this palette. So you have going from matte to sequin to metallic and then glitter shades, and it's all the same color story going up, if you can see, just in different formulas. And I love that. I think it's really nice, and it's beginner friendly too. I mean, I'm not a beginner in eyeshadow, but it just makes it so that it's so easy. Like you can kind of just turn your brain off and just do. Like you don't really have to think about like, oh, what am I going to do next, or how am I going to put together a look. Like some palettes, they try to make it so different, so unlike all of the other eyeshadow palettes on the market, that it becomes kind of like, all right, so what am I supposed to do with this thing? So that's why I like with this palette, first of all, you've got your everyday colors, colors that you can wear to work, colors that you can wear out a night on the town. Like you can do pretty much anything with that palette, so I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see what she does with the brand, because going forward, this was definitely like a step in the right direction. So we'll see. I know it says volume 1, so that makes you think that there will be more palettes that she comes out with. So I like to see what she does with the brand going forward. Okay, so the next question is your most colorful eyeshadow palette. And I'm not gonna lie, I have 4 here. I tend to go for brighter looks. I usually like to use a lot of color in my makeup. So I do have a lot, like pretty much, I think, honestly, yeah, I would even want to say like 90% of the palettes that I have do have a pretty bright color story, but these are the ones that I could think of that had most like variation between colors, more of like a rainbow-esque type of thing. So the first one I have is something that you probably already have seen before. It is the Morphe and James Charles palette. I have it here. It's rainbow, like you literally have the rainbow in one palette and then some transition shades in the middle to be able to create very cohesive looks. If you want to do bright, colorful, crazy rainbow eyes, you can, but if you want to tone it down, you can do that as well with that palette. And then also from Morphe, you can open it. It is, what is this one called? It's just their artistry palette. It was from their Pride collection. This, I'm not entirely too sure if this is still around. I might have been limited edition. I'm not sure if it is limited edition or if it isn't. I will definitely list that down below. But that's this one, and that's like a rainbow color story as well. This one, there's not any neutrals in here, so you pretty much have to do a bright eyeshadow look. You can't really necessarily like have a soft, subdued, smoky eye. It's not really that kind of palette. Then I also have the Jeffree Star Jawbreaker palette, which is pretty much like a rainbow palette as well. This is the newer one to my like rainbow collection, which I like to keep these little like protectors on personally. Okay. And then it looks like this. So they're all pretty much, you know, the same or like similar, but I like to test out different formulas between companies too. And honestly, the ones I listed, all of the eyeshadow palettes that I've listed, I honestly recommend, I definitely think are worth the money. Personally, what you want to spend is up to you, but I did a declutter, so I did get rid of some palettes. The palettes I have are the palettes I kind of want to stick with. Nothing here is something that I would say like, ooh, not good. Okay, so the next one is your smallest palette, and that is my Dose of Colors and I Love Seti collab, which looks like this. It's pretty small. It's definitely smaller than a majority of the palettes that I have. And this one I know is limited edition, and I am almost certain that you can't find it anywhere unless you were to like happen to find it on eBay. And even then, you're probably gonna end up spending like $100 on it because it is like, you can't get it anymore. So of course that increases the value of it. But at the time it wasn't super crazy expensive. The next one is your biggest palette. And that would be my James Charles palette, which I just showed you, or they have the Morphe 39A. I have that somewhere here. And then I have the 39A as well, which is the exact same packaging as the James Charles palette. Of course, it doesn't say James Charles on it, but it just looks like this. Ooh, and I just dipped my finger in some shadow. It looks like this. It's literally the exact same layout, same structure of the James Charles palette. So those are my biggest ones, and those are a pain in the butt to store, but I love them. I really do. I love them a lot, so it is what it is. And I love this one. I love how this is included in here, but this one is your palette with the best memory. And I would think, honestly, I'm gonna say it's my original Jaclyn Hill palette with Morphe. As you can see, it is completely disgusting. But I definitely have gotten a lot of love out of this one. It may not look like it, but it really has been used quite a lot. I actually keep this one in my kit. So I use this one on a lot of clients because the color story just works, honestly. I definitely like this one because if you can see, it's a majority of like neutrals, and then you have your pops of color. So it's one of those ones that honestly I feel like is perfect for a makeup artist. It's inexpensive, it's easy to access. You can get it at Ulta, you can get it at Morphe. So it's just easy to get. I know that they did change the formula. I do want to address this. They did change the formula, so this is no longer vegan. I'm pretty sure it's still cruelty-free, but it's no longer vegan. So, you know, whatever you want to do with that information, that's on you. But I do still love this. This is the original. This has the original formula, and I stand by it. I don't know. I can't necessarily say how the redone formula is on the newer one. I can't say. I know Jen Loves Reviews did a review on it. She said it's not the same. I don't know. I don't have it. I only have this one, the original formula. All right, so the next category is your palette that is worth the hype. And I feel like I'm just like including this so much, but the James Charles palette, I feel like that's a palette that's definitely worth the hype. Personally, I don't like how big the palette is because it is a pain in the butt to store. I do have two actually. One of them is my personal one. This is my personal one. And then I have one in my makeup kit because I loved it so much. I was like, and it does have those brighter pops of color. So if I do have a client who comes and sits down in my chair and they want something bold, I'm not going to be like, oh crap, I don't have something in my kit. I needed to have something that was well-rounded enough that I can definitely like utilize color. If color is what a client wants, I definitely want to be able to provide for them. And it is definitely an artistry palette because you have the whole rainbow in this palette. So you can always mix and match and make your own different colors because you have those primary and secondary colors in there that you can definitely create anything. Like it definitely is an artistry palette. A lot of people who don't like it is usually because they find that it's hard to blend. Personally, I don't have that problem, but I can see where people would. This is one of those palettes you have to use an eye primer or an eye base with. You can't just use concealer. So for that, it is a little more finicky, but if you know that going in, you're not like, oh, why is this not working? You kind of know you have to finesse it a little bit. And I don't mind. It's not one of those ones that it's so difficult to work with that you can't make it work, because I've had that happen before. This is not one of those kinds of products. Like, you definitely can make it work. It just needs to give a little bit more love into it. So the palette that is not worth the hype. This is kind of an older palette now at this point. I still have it. I was actually debating on decluttering it at some point, and I probably will. It is my Too Faced Chocolate Bar Gold. I don't hate it, and that's why I think I've kept it around for a while. And at the time, I feel like there was a lot of hype behind it. But I feel like the reason there was a lot of hype behind it too was because a lot of these people, influencers, were being paid to talk about it. So there's a difference between people who are genuinely interested in it and people who are being paid to be interested in it. And I feel like the color story is interesting enough that it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of cool. But I don't know, it's not my favorite. Like, the shimmers are good. They definitely show up. They're definitely shimmery, but I don't know. They get like a little bit of a hard pan on them, which is when the eyeshadows get like really pressed. So you can't pick up that shimmer. It literally is just kind of, it doesn't pick up on the brush. And I kind of have to I find myself having to like really dig in with my brush just to get any of that pigment. After a while, when you first use it, it's great, but then after a while it gets that hard pan and then you kind of almost can't use it. This color I've used a lot. If you can see, it's like almost gone. It is Rollin' in Dough, and I like to use that because I like to, I don't set my base anymore, my eyeshadow base, but I used to. So I would use that a lot to set my eyeshadow base, and because it was an eyeshadow, eyeshadows tend to play well together. So that's kind of what I was using it for, but then I found myself only really using it for that color and then Cocoa Truffle, which is this color right here. And I just really honestly stopped using it. It smells awesome. It smells like chocolate, but that's honestly kind of at this point the only redeeming quality about that palette. This next one is Show Your Favorite Palette from Your Favorite Brand. I don't necessarily think I have one favorite brand, but if I had to narrow it down between two brands, I think I would definitely choose between Morphe and Jeffree Star Cosmetics. I'm not the biggest fan of Jeffree Star as a person. I don't always love his actions, but you got to admit the guy makes freaking awesome makeup. So if I'm setting the man aside from the company and just going based off of eyeshadows, I definitely love his eyeshadow formula. And I know what I'm about to say is going to be quite controversial. No one get mad in the comments, but it's going to be the Jeffree Star Jawbreaker palette, which I showed before. I love it how there's such a variety of colors, and I love his formula. They're just so smooth. They blend out so seamlessly. It's definitely everything that I could want in an eyeshadow formula and in a palette, because you've got such a variety of colors. And then also, the other one I want to say is the James Charles palette again. I feel like I just keep showing the James Charles palette, but it is so good, honestly. It really is awesome. If you are a beginner and you just want a palette that has a well-rounded color story, like, it's definitely the one to go to. Honestly, just so much that you can do with this one that, I recommend it, honestly. And then the last one is your most used palette. And honestly, I don't think I have a most used palette. I really try to keep a lot of these on rotation so that I am switching things up and so things are not getting bland. There's no way that one person can go through all of these eyeshadow palettes. Like, it's just, there's no way it could ever happen. So I don't really think I have a most used. If I had to say, honestly, between the two, probably my James Charles and my Tati Beauty palette would be my most used. Really, I'm trying to vary it up and change it up. So I hope if you guys are watching this and you want to do this palette too, do it. It's actually really fun. It's very eye-opening. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye.
Maybe you should think twice. Would you wanna be like you?